When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: the Gravelwalker. User: wanted DOA54. Posted January 28, 1999.
As soon as the gravel went quiet under my boots, I knew I wasn't alone out there. I'd worked a night crew long enough to know how the ground should sound. Gravel always has a voice. Crunching, grinding, shifting, little stones rolling over each other like they're whispering. Even on windless nights, even when the world feels empty, it still speaks. But when I stepped off Route 7 to check a washed-out shoulder and the gravel didn't make a single damn sound, not a crunch, not a scrape, nothing at all, it felt like I'd put my foot onto a polished stone floor instead of loose rock. I froze, boot halfway on the shoulder, half on the asphalt. Behind me, my county truck idled, hazard lights throwing slow orange pulses into the fog. The night was cold enough that my breath wavered in front of the flashlight beam. I waited, listening. A normal patch of gravel always shifts a little under your weight. This patch didn't shift at all. I pulled back onto the pavement. The sound returned. The scuff of my heel, the low hum of the truck. My heart was beating too damn hard for something so small, and I knew it, but I also knew what my ears told me. Gravel doesn't go silent unless something changes it. Silence wasn't the first strange thing I'd seen on that road. A few weeks before, I'd found a fox in the ditch near mile marker 12. Not roadkill, no tire tracks, no blood. The underside of the animal was rubbed smooth and raw, like someone had dragged it belly first across rough stone for a long, long time. A few days later, it was a raccoon. Then, a stray dog. Always the belly scraped to skin, always the gravel underneath smoothed flat as a table. No tracks, no prints, just that eerie, unnatural tidiness. I mentioned it to my foreman, Weathers, a guy who's been around the county longer than the damn pavement has. Corey takes what it wants, he muttered into his mug. I figured he was just leaning into old local color. Everyone in Connolly knows Ridge Hollow Quarry shut down back in '62 after the big collapse. Company sealed it up instead of pulling all the bodies out. Cheaper that way. Folks around here say the earth remembers what you bury in it, especially when you bury men without rights. I didn't believe any of that. Not then. The second time the gravel went silent, it wasn't just under my boot. It was under my truck. I'd parked half on the shoulder to check erosion on the culvert near the quarry access road. Fog had rolled in thick, heavy as wool. When I turned the key to fire the truck back up, the radio shrieked, a blast of static so sharp I jerked sideways. Then it cut out as if nothing happened. The engine turned over. I put it in gear. But the truck didn't rock like it normally does on loose gravel. No crunch, no shift. The wheels might as well have been sitting on concrete. I climbed out, my breath clouding in the cold air. The gravel under the tires lay perfect, smooth, even, like it had been placed piece by piece by a machine. No indentation from the weight of the truck. No churned stones. Okay, I whispered. That's not possible. Then the ground moved, just a little, but enough. Not a shake like a quake, more like something big stretching under the surface. I stumbled back onto the road. My flashlight beam jittered over the fog-thick ditch. For a second, I could have sworn the gravel down there rippled like a living thing. I got in the truck, turned it around, and drove like hell until the fog thinned. The rest of the week, every little sound made me jump. I told myself it was stress, leftover guilt from the fight with Kyle Mercer behind Murphy's Bar last winter, the fight that ended with his skull cracking on the edge of the loading dock and a judge using the word involuntary. I'd walked free, but that moment lived behind my eyelids every damn night. Guilt has weight, I know that. I just didn't know it could have footsteps. Last night it happened. Route 7 was quiet as a grave. Fog pulled low, clinging to the ditch lines. Hazard lights pulsed behind me as I walked up to inspect another washout. That's when I saw it. A long spread of gravel ahead, 30 feet at least, perfectly flat. No tracks, no dips, no tire impressions, just a flawless sheet of stone. My flashlight beam skittered across it, gleaming. Something in my gut twisted. I tested the edge with my toe. Silence. I stepped fully onto it. The gravel beneath me heaved in one fluid rolling motion, like something directly underneath was turning over in bed. I staggered back with a shout, barely catching myself before I fell into the ditch. The fog swirled, moving in a direction fog shouldn't move, uphill toward me, like it was drawn to the sound of my breathing. And that's when I saw it rising. Not all at once, not like in a movie, just emerging. The gravel bulged. Stones slid upward in a slow current. They poured into a shape. Long limbs, narrow torso, head cocked unnaturally. Not a creature made of flesh, not bones, just stone and crushed rock, held together like wet clay but never quite settling. A rough outline of a man, elongated, jittering with each shifting pebble. Its presence was raw, heavy, like pressure behind your eyes before a migraine. The sound coming from it wasn't a growl. It was the sound of thousands of rocks grinding, shifting, tumbling, a voice born from crushed stone trying to form syllables. My name might have been in there, or Kyle's, or one of the miners sealed in the collapse. The Gravelwalker, though I didn't know that word yet, took a step toward me. If a step is what you call the way, its long foot dissolved into gravel and reformed as it moved. It never touched asphalt. It stayed on the shoulder, bound to broken ground. I backed up onto the road. My flashlight flickered. The ditch fog coiled around the thing like it was breathing. The air filled with the scent of dust and cold earth, the kind of smell you get when something underground finally sees open air again. I ran. I'm not proud of it, but I ran. When I reached the truck, I didn't look back. I drove until my breathing eased enough to stay in my lane. At the county yard, I sat in the cab for 20 minutes, staring at the gravel lot, waiting to see if it would rise too. It didn't. But that whole night, something whispered through the stones. The next day, I didn't tell Weathers. What would I say? Hey, boss, the gravel came alive and tried to get me. I'd have my badge and pee in a cup before I finished the sentence, but the truth sat in my chest. Something was living under those gravel shoulders, something that moved only on the broken earth, something drawn to guilt or grief or whatever black weight sits in a man's gut after he's done something he can't ever make right. Gravelwalker wasn't hunting animals. It wasn't hunting the road. It was waiting, grooming its ground, making room. Even now, when I'm out there patching shoulders at midnight, I stay on the asphalt. I don't step onto the gravel unless I absolutely have to, and when I do, I test it first with the edge of my boot. Sometimes it crunches like it should, and sometimes it goes dead silent. When that happens, I don't breathe. I don't move, and I damn sure don't look down because I know what's under there. I know what's listening. I know it remembers men buried without rights, and it remembers the ones walking free who should have been buried too.
Subject: Cooper's Muzzle. User: CoopsDude11. Posted August 16th, 1996.
I got home a little after 6 on a cold, washed-out autumn evening. The kind where the sun is already sagging behind the rooftops and every breath feels sharp enough to scratch your throat. Work had been the usual parade of pointless meetings, stale break room coffee, and the kind of fluorescent lights that make you feel like someone is slowly draining your will to live through your eyeballs. All I wanted was a quiet night, a microwave dinner, maybe a beer if I wasn't too tired to walk back to the fridge for it. Instead, before I'd even gotten the key into the lock, Cooper practically slammed the front door off its hinges. He'd never greeted me like that before. Sure, he was always excited when I came home, tail wagging, paws tapping, but this was something else entirely. He bounced up and down like every muscle in his body had been plugged into an electrical socket. Whining, circling me, nudging my hands, tail wagging so hard his whole back end swung side to side. I laughed and crouched to pet him, thinking maybe there'd been thunder or fireworks or something that set him off, but the second he pressed his face against my cheek, the scent hit me. Coppery, damp, unmistakable. Blood. It was smeared across his muzzle and splattered in tiny freckles along his chest. At first, I thought maybe he'd bitten his tongue or cut himself, but Cooper's tail was still going like a metronome on overdrive. His tongue lolled out in a doggy grin, happy as ever, completely unhurt. Now, my heart was up in my throat. I took a step back and scanned the entryway. There were droplets on the tile, dark little beads trailing down the hall. Cooper trotted ahead of me as if guiding me toward whatever he was so damn proud of. I followed the dots of blood past the living room and into the kitchen, and the world tilted sideways. The back door's glass panel was shattered, shards glittering on the tile like ice. A cold wind pushed through the jagged opening, tugging the curtains into a soft, steady flutter. The air smelled metallic, raw. The floor looked like something out of a crime scene photo. Streaks of blood, splatters on the fridge, smears where something had slid or been dragged. Chunks of grayish tissue lay in a loose scatter across the tile, and near the baseboards, deep scratches gouged into the linoleum like claws had raked across it again and again. Cooper stood beside me proudly, tail thumping the cabinets. He looked up at me as if waiting for praise. "Jesus, Coop, what did you do?" My hands were shaking so badly I could barely lift the phone from its cradle on the wall. The dispatcher's voice blurred together as I stammered out the details. A break-in, a smashed door, blood everywhere. Something was injured in the yard. She told me officers were on the way and to stay inside, but even while she said it, I heard something outside. A noise that punched straight through the blood and glass and shock. A wet, rattling breath. I dropped the phone without hanging up and forced myself through the broken door. The yard was dim, most of the light coming from my neighbor's motion sensor, weak and flickering. Grass flattened under my shoes as I stepped out, Cooper bounding ahead until I grabbed his collar and held him tightly, and then I saw it. At first, my brain tried to categorize it. That's a coyote, or a large dog, or a raccoon with mange. Something normal, something explainable, but the shape lying crumpled near the back fence wasn't any of those things. Its body was hunched unnaturally, limbs bent at angles that didn't match any anatomy I'd ever seen. Patches of coarse fur stuck to its side, mixed with patches of thin, pale skin that almost looked stretched. One arm, if you could call it that, extended crookedly from its torso, ending in long, sickle-shaped claws that curled backward like hooks. Its chest rose in uneven lurches, pulling air through a narrow slit where a throat might have been. The sound it made was wet and strained, halfway between a gasp and a gargle. Its head, or face, was a rigid plate of cartilage, smooth and rounded, with no clear eyes or mouth. A line of dark blood trickled down its side and soaked into the grass. Cooper barked again, low and proud. He'd fought this thing. He'd driven it out of the house. Every instinct in me was shouting to run back inside and barricade the door, but I couldn't move. I could only stare at the creature as it shuddered and twitched, like it was trying to lift itself but didn't know how. Gurgling breath hitched, then wheezed. Then the sirens cut through the night. I snapped out of whatever trance had held me and dragged Cooper back inside. Within moments, red and blue lights flooded the yard through the broken glass, and the officers approached fast, hands hovering near their weapons. I opened the front door and tried to explain. Something broke in. The dog fought it. It's still in the yard. It's hurt. Please, hurry. 2 officers rushed past me, flashlights slicing through the darkness, while another stayed with me in the kitchen. My voice felt distant and too loud as I repeated myself. Something was in my yard, something not right, something bleeding. I followed them out, dread thick in my throat. But the yard was empty. The creature was gone. No dragging marks, no trail, just a slick, dark pool of blood soaking into the grass where it had been, and chunks of tissue scattered like discarded bait. One of the officers knelt beside the mess, shining his light over the ground. Another swept the perimeter of the fence. The third walked back toward me slowly, face unreadable. "There's nothing here," he said. "There was," I insisted. "It was lying right there. It couldn't move. It could barely breathe." He held my gaze, calm but skeptical. "You said your dog was involved. Could be a coyote. They can get mangy. Look strange when injured." "It wasn't a coyote," I said. "It wasn't anything I've seen in my life." The officer didn't argue, but he didn't agree either. They made notes, took pictures, promised animal control would check the area at first light. Then they left. The sound of tires crunching on gravel fading until the neighborhood was silent again. Inside, Cooper curled on the rug as if nothing had happened, licking dried blood from his paws. I sat on the kitchen floor beside him, staring at the broken door. Every time the wind stirred the curtains, I flinched. I didn't sleep that night. I turned off every light except the one by the hallway and sat with Cooper's head in my lap, replaying the scene in the yard over and over. I thought about the way the creature's chest had moved, the claw marks on the floor, the fact that something had smashed my door from the outside, not the inside. And the worst part, the thing that kept me frozen long after midnight, wasn't the gore or the smashed glass or the blood drying on my dog's fur. It was the simple, terrible realization whatever smashed my door, whatever bled out in my yard was still alive and moving somewhere in the dark.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.